May 23, 1983. J. Seward Johnson Sr. dies at 87 years old in his bed at Jasna Palana, the 50,000-square-foot mansion he built for $30 million in Princeton, New Jersey. His 6 children gather for the reading of the will. They expect to inherit hundreds of millions of dollars. After all, their father's estate is worth more than $400 million. The Johnson & Johnson fortune has made them all wealthy, but this is different. This is their father's personal money. His art collection alone, Rembrandt, Raphael, Fra Angelico, is worth a fortune. The lawyer begins reading. I leave virtually my entire estate to my wife, Barbara Piasecka Johnson. Silence. His children, 4 from his first marriage, 2 from his second, have been cut out. The woman who started as their father's maid, who couldn't cook, who was switched to housework, who married him 8 days after his divorce was finalized, gets everything. The legal war that follows will become the largest, costliest, ugliest will contest in American history. It will last 15 weeks. It will destroy whatever family bonds remained. And it will reveal secrets about the Johnson dynasty that should have stayed buried in those massive mansions they built. But let me ask you something. How does the family that revolutionized medicine, that saved millions of lives with sterile bandages and antiseptic practices, end up with bodies found alone in guest houses? How do the people who built castles to last forever end up dying in them under mysterious circumstances? How does a fortune built on healing become a curse that destroys everyone it touches? The answer is written in stone. 3 mansions, 5 generations, a pattern of tragedy so consistent it defies probability. Merrywold Castle in Highland Park, New Jersey, where secret staircases hide secrets of alleged child abuse, kidnapping attempts, and murder. Jasna Palana in Princeton, 50,000 square feet, 32 bathrooms, $30 million construction cost, and a will contest that tore a family apart. Lightning Tree Farm in the Hudson Valley, 600 acres, private helipad, 5 marriages, and a woman who collected properties like others collect art, only to die alone with Alzheimer's. These aren't just houses. They're monuments to what happens when extreme wealth meets human weakness, when privilege becomes prison, when inheritance becomes curse. If you're fascinated by the dark side of American dynasties and want to understand what really happens behind mansion walls, subscribe now. This is a story about band-aids and baby powder, billions and betrayal, castles and corpses. And by the end, you'll understand why some fortunes should never be inherited. The Johnson & Johnson Company's motto is, "We care." But the family that built it forgot to care for each other. This is their story. New Brunswick, New Jersey. 1886. 3 brothers stand in a cramped 4th-floor factory. 14 workers manufacture something revolutionary: sterile surgical dressings. Before this moment, surgery was often a death sentence. Not from lack of skill, but because invisible germs lurked in every bandage. Joseph Lister discovered carbolic acid could kill these germs, but the medical establishment was slow to listen. Robert Wood Johnson heard Lister speak and saw opportunity. Born February 20th, 1845 in Carbondale, Pennsylvania, he was the 8th of 11 children. His father was a farmer. At 16, Robert apprenticed at his uncle's pharmacy, where he found his calling among jars of medicine and crude bandages. In 1874, he partnered with George Seabury to form Seabury & Johnson, but disagreements arose. By 1880, Robert sold his shares and was barred from medical supplies for 10 years. His brothers James and Edward weren't bound by that restriction. They started their own struggling venture. When Robert's non-compete ended in 1886, he rejoined with fresh capital and ambition. Johnson & Johnson was born. The timing was perfect. Hospitals were expanding, medical practices modernizing. Prepackaged sterile dressings meant doctors could trust their bandages wouldn't kill patients. The company exploded from 14 workers to 40 buildings. When Robert Wood Johnson died, February 7, 1910, he left $2 million, enormous for that era. But more importantly, he left sons who would multiply that wealth beyond imagination. And with that wealth came darkness. Robert Wood Johnson II was 17 when his father died. His mother urged college. Bobby had other plans. He dropped out and took an entry-level job in the powerhouse where steam engines hummed. He wanted to learn from the ground up. By 22, he was department head. By World War I, general superintendent. During World War II, President Roosevelt commissioned him as brigadier general, overseeing military contracts. The title general followed him back to civilian life. But the general ruled his family with iron discipline. His oldest son, Bobby Jr., grew up largely ignored. When noticed, it was to criticize. "You're weak, you're obese, you'll never amount to anything." Words like these don't fade. They sink in, settle, and quietly reshape a life. For Bobby Jr., they became a blueprint. Against expectation and pressure, he rose to the presidency in 1961. To the outside world, it looked like triumph. Inside the family, it was merely another test. 4 years later, the general removed him from office. His own son. Power in this family was conditional. Affection even more so. The general believed deeply in systems. People were flawed. Structures were reliable. To protect his bloodline, he established trusts for his children and for the descendants of his brother Seward. Each trust contained 15,000 shares of Johnson & Johnson stock, worth $500,000 at the time. It was not generosity. It was control, extending decades into the future. Those shares multiplied. Stock splits followed growth. Growth followed time. By the early 2000s, some descendants became unimaginably wealthy without building anything of their own. They inherited abundance, but not direction. The general believed he was securing stability. Instead, he may have removed struggle, the very thing that gives purpose. His younger brother J. Seward Johnson lived by different rules. Where the general valued discipline and restraint, Seward embraced indulgence and impulse. Together, the brothers controlled most of Johnson & Johnson, a corporate empire that symbolized trust, care, and reliability. Yet behind closed doors, the family itself was anything but stable. In 1924, Seward decided to make a statement, not in business, but in stone. Highland Park, New Jersey. On a bluff overlooking the Raritan River, a medieval castle began to rise. It made no sense architecturally or culturally. Turrets and ramparts didn't belong in suburban America. But Seward had never cared about belonging. Merrywold Castle cost $350,000, millions in today's money. Limestone and sandstone walls embedded with ancient fossils. More than 100 leaded glass windows. 11 fireplaces. 25 rooms. The structure was imposing, beautiful, and deeply isolating. But what made Merrywold truly unique wasn't what could be seen. It was what was hidden. Secret staircases were built into the walls, allowing silent movement between floors. Concealed rooms offered privacy and discretion. A hidden liquor cabinet swung open behind a bookshelf, designed specifically for prohibition. The architects didn't just design a home, they designed secrecy. Above the breakfast room fireplace, zodiac symbols were carved into the stone. They were meant to represent harmony and family unity. In hindsight, they became an unintended monument to irony. Nothing about Merrywold would be merry. Those who later spoke about life inside the castle described emotional distance and quiet tension. Large rooms amplified silence. Privacy became isolation. Children grew up surrounded by wealth, but separated from one another, each retreating into their own corners of the estate. Decades later, serious allegations would emerge within the family. Claims of long-term emotional harm rooted in childhood experiences at Merrywold. These accounts were deeply disputed. Some family members believed them, others rejected them entirely. No version of the story was ever fully resolved. The truth, if it existed cleanly at all, remained buried beneath wealth, loyalty, and silence. In March of 1932, America was gripped by fear after the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. Just weeks later, that fear reached Merrywold. An intruder attempted to enter the castle late at night, carrying a ladder and climbing toward a nursery window. Seward heard the disturbance. He grabbed a gun and fired. The intruder fell and was later arrested. Newspapers compared the incident to Lindbergh, but emphasized the difference. This time, the child was safe. The headlines faded. The castle endured. By 1937, Seward's marriage collapsed. His wife, Ruth, filed for divorce, citing emotional neglect. She was granted ownership of Merrywold and custody of the children. But she refused to live in the main building. The memories were too heavy. Instead, she moved into a smaller residence on the property and never returned to the castle itself. She lived there for 50 years. Seward remarried and left, abandoning the structure that bore his ambitions. Time passed. New occupants arrived. In the 1960s, an industrial engineer and his wife moved into the main building. Their marriage deteriorated under paranoia and resentment. One night, a gunshot echoed through the castle. The incident once again dragged Merrywold into the headlines, reinforcing its growing reputation as a place where wealth and tragedy intersected. Eventually, even the headlines stopped. Today, Merrywold Castle still stands. Its dark history has been scrubbed clean by time and commerce. It now serves as a corporate headquarters. Conference tables occupy rooms once designed for secrecy. Hallways that once carried whispers now echo with footsteps and polite conversation. The secret staircases remain, no longer threatening, just curiosities. In the courtyard sits a bronze sculpture by Seward Johnson Jr., one of the children raised in the shadow of the castle. It depicts a man reading a newspaper, perhaps reading about the headlines the castle once created. The walls remain silent, but they remember everything. The girl on the powder can grew up beautiful. She married young, divorced, married again and again. 4 husbands total. Her first marriage produced 2 sons. By the 1960s, one developed a drug addiction. She sought help from psychiatrists. That's how she met Dr. Victor d'Arc. He was a psychiatrist, sophisticated. Mary Lear was vulnerable. They began an affair. In 1962, she married him, her 3rd husband. It would become her worst nightmare. The marriage deteriorated quickly. Mary Lear discovered he was homosexual or bisexual, that he had a lover. She became convinced Dr. Victor d'Arc and his lover were plotting to kill her. It sounds paranoid, except the evidence suggests she might be right. Mary Lear makes a public declaration. Her estranged husband and his lover have hired hitmen to murder her. She's living with her 4th husband-to-be, Marty Richards, a gay Broadway producer. Together, they hire bodyguards. Armed men follow her everywhere. People think she's crazy. Then someone breaks into her home. The bodyguard is beaten almost to death. Mary Lear and Marty barely escape. The Bronx District Attorney investigates. No charges are ever brought. The case goes cold. But Mary Lear knows what she knows. She was targeted. The attack was real. She divorces d'Arc in 1978, marries Marty Richards. Together they become Broadway producers, helping finance The Shining, Fort Apache the Bronx, Sweeney Todd. But she never feels safe again. Bodyguards become permanent. She trusts no one. The trust fund contained millions. But Mary Lear spent faster than dividends arrived. Broadway productions are expensive. Bodyguards are expensive. Drug habits are expensive. In the 1960s, Mary Lee sued her own father for more money. The lawsuit failed, but poisoned their relationship. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, she battled demons. Alcohol, pills, cocaine. Depression crashed over her in waves. The paranoia never left. Even after divorcing Dark, she believed people were watching, following, planning something. May 3rd, 1990. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mary Lee Johnson Richards dies at 63. Official cause: complications from various health problems. But people who knew her understood. Mary Lear had been dying slowly for decades, poisoned by memories, haunted by trauma. The baby on the powder can, the symbol of innocence, disappeared from the world with barely a whisper. The Johnson fortune was supposed to provide security. Instead, the money became a magnet for predators. Dark married her for her fortune. Criminals targeted her because of her wealth. Her father built a castle, but castles have dungeons, and some prisoners never escape. Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Barbara Piasecka steps off a plane at JFK with $100 in her pocket and a master's degree in art history from the University of Roswell. Within 15 years, she'll own one of America's most expensive residences. Within 20, she'll be worth $350 million. Within 25, she'll be at the center of the ugliest will contest in American history. But first, she needs work. Barbara takes a job as cook for J. Seward Johnson Sr. and his second wife, Esther. There's one problem. Barbara is a terrible cook. Esther switches her to housework, cleaning, making beds. Barbara proves capable. One morning, Seward cuts through the kitchen. He's 75, married 32 years, his children grown. He stops. "My wife told me we have a pretty cook," he says pleasantly. "I'm Mr. Johnson. I hope you will be happy here." Something has been set in motion. Barbara notices Seward's art collection. One day she casually remarks he's overpaid for a painting. It's not by the master, but his disciple. She proves it using dates, technique, historical context. Cites her master's degree. Seward is stunned. He appoints her art consultant at $12,000 annually. She begins accompanying him to galleries, auctions, private sales. Their relationship quickly becomes more than professional. Seward sets Barbara up in a Manhattan apartment, then moves in with her. His marriage to Esther disintegrates. The divorce is quick. 8 days after it's finalized in 1971, 76-year-old Seward Johnson marries 34-year-old Barbara Piasecka. None of his 6 children attend. The newlyweds need a proper home. They find 140 acres between Princeton and Lawrenceville. Pay $1 million. They hire Wallace K. Harrison, designer of the UN headquarters and Met Opera House. Instructions: build the biggest and best house in the world. What rises covers 50,000 square feet, but contains only 2 bedrooms. Barbara doesn't want guests. She wants space for art. What it has: 32 bathrooms, 15 fireplaces, wine cellar, climate-controlled art cellar, air-conditioned doghouse galleries for Raphael, Rembrandt, Fra Angelico 18th century furniture from European estates. Every detail is chosen by Barbara. She overrides Harrison repeatedly. Eventually, Harrison removes his name from the project. Construction costs exceed $30 million, $175 million today. They name it Jasna Polana, Polish for bright glade. When construction completes in 1978, they throw an opening party. Invite the elite. President Jimmy Carter, declined. Cyrus Vance, declined. Walter Cronkite, declined. Anne Morrow Lindbergh, declined. Barbara scrambles to find lesser celebrities. The house meant to announce their arrival has become a monument to isolation. Within its walls, Seward and Barbara live largely alone, surrounded by priceless treasures. As Seward grows older and frailer, Barbara's control becomes absolute. His 6 children watch from outside, increasingly alarmed. Seward is 87. His lawyer arrives with documents. A new will. The provisions are devastating. Barbara receives virtually the entire estate, more than $400 million. The mansion, the art, the stock, everything. His 6 children are largely excluded. Seward signs. His signature is shaky but legally binding. May 23, 1983. J. Seward Johnson Sr. dies at 87. His children gather for the reading. I leave virtually my entire estate to my wife, Barbara Piasecka Johnson. The woman who started as their father's maid gets everything. Within weeks, they hire lawyers. New York Surrogates Court, April 1985. The largest, costliest will contest in American history begins. 6 children led by sculptor Seward Johnson Jr. versus Barbara Piasecka Johnson. Their allegations: mental incompetence, undue influence, fraud. The trial lasts 15 weeks. The testimony former servants paint a devastating picture. A housekeeper. Barbara flew into violent rages over trivial matters, screamed at Seward, called him names in front of staff. A nurse. Barbara controlled every aspect of Seward's life. When children tried to visit, Barbara found excuses. A driver. He witnessed Barbara shoving 85-year-old Seward during an argument. The old man stumbled, nearly fell. An estate manager. Seward seemed afraid of Barbara, would glance at her before answering questions, seeking permission. But Barbara's attorneys have witnesses too. Art dealers. Barbara's expertise in Renaissance art is legitimate. She shared Seward's passion for culture. Friends. The marriage was genuine. Seward was happier with Barbara than he'd been in decades. Seward's lawyer, Johnson, was completely competent when signing the will. Then Barbara takes the stand. He was lonely, she says in accented English. His children never visited. They only called when they wanted money. I gave him companionship. The attorney attacks. You were his maid, then married him 8 days after his divorce. How is that not opportunistic? I fell in love with a man who happened to be wealthy. The most damaging evidence. Secret recordings from Jasna Polana. In one, Barbara screams at Seward, calls him useless, stupid. In another, Seward's weak voice. Can I see Diana? Barbara. She doesn't want to see you. None of them do. In a third, Seward is crying. Barbara's voice is cold. Stop being pathetic. Sign the papers. The recordings change everything. June 2nd, 1986. One day before jury deliberation. The settlement, Barbara keeps $350 million. Jasna Polana with all contents. The art collection. 6 children split, $42.5 million. Approximately $7 million each. Harbor Branch Foundation, $20 million. Both sides claim victory. But the real verdict comes when Judge Marie Lambert and several jurors attend a celebration. The children's party, not Barbara's. Millbrook, New York, 1980. Elizabeth Ross. Libet Johnson is 29. Blonde, beautiful, a billionaire. She's bidding on a Greek revival mansion built around 1850. She wins. Her first significant real estate purchase. Over 25 years, Libet will assemble an empire, but this property, Lightning Tree Farm, will become her obsession. Libet is the general's granddaughter. Her father is Bobby Jr., the son the general humiliated and fired. In 1975, when Libet is 24, her brother Keith dies from cocaine overdose at 27. Within months, Brother Billy dies in a motorcycle accident at 23, impaled on an iron picket fence. The family trusts have a provision. When children die without issue, their shares divide among survivors. Suddenly, Libet and her surviving brothers Woody and Christopher are among the wealthiest of their generation, each worth over $1 billion. But money doesn't bring her brothers back. Libet does what rich people do when in pain. She shops, but not for clothes, for real estate. Lightning Tree Farm starts as 50 acres. Then Libet buys adjacent properties, and the next, and the next. By the 1990s, 600 acres. The mansion grows to 18,000 square feet, 9 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, 8 fireplaces, elevator wine cellar, dog room, home, theatre, children's playroom with stage. Outside, custom fountains, swimming pool with full kitchen 18-stall horse stable, multiple guest houses, private helipad, one of the only permitted in Dutchess County, commute to Manhattan, 40 minutes by air. But Lightning Tree Farm is just the beginning. In New York City, Libet purchases the Vanderbilt Mansion, $15 million, then another $10 million in renovations. She also buys multiple Manhattan apartments, Palm Beach House, Los Angeles property, investment properties nationwide. Her portfolio exceeds $100 million, but she's not buying investments, she's buying possibilities. Alternative lives, escape routes. Libet marries 5 times. The first produces 4 children, the second ends quickly, then the third, fourth, fifth. Between marriages, she dates famous men, Michael Bolton, Frederick Fekkai. Her romantic life fills gossip columns. But the coverage is rarely kind. Poor little rich girl, can't find happiness despite all that money. Vanity Fair publishes an explosive interview. Casey Johnson, Libet's niece, accuses her aunt of seducing Casey's boyfriend. The accusation tears through the family. Woody, Libet's brother, Casey's father, reportedly wants nothing to do with it. Within 4 years, Casey will be dead. By 2010, Libet is increasingly reclusive. 5 marriages have exhausted her. She retreats into her properties. First signs of Alzheimer's appear around 2012. Forgetting names, losing track of conversations. The disease progresses. By 2015, Libet needs full-time care. She spends most time at Lightning Tree Farm, the place she spent 35 years building. The woman who collected properties can no longer remember which house she's in. The woman who married 5 times can't remember some of their names. By 2016, she's largely non-verbal. June 2017. Lightning Tree Farm. Libet Johnson dies at 66. Complications from Alzheimer's. No grand funeral. The woman who appeared in newspapers for decades disappears quietly. Lightning Tree Farm goes on the market. $28.5 million. Takes 3 years to sell. The Vanderbilt Mansion is listed for $55 million. Reduced repeatedly. Eventually converted to rental at $95,000 per month. By 2020, the Libet Johnson empire is dissolved. Sold to different buyers. Scattered. What was the point? Libet spent 37 years buying properties, assembling an empire, creating spaces for any life she might want. But she never figured out which life she actually wanted. The money that was supposed to provide freedom became a trap. Of all Libet's siblings, one seems to escape the curse. Robert Wood Johnson IV, Woody, follows a path his ancestors would recognize. He works hard, invests wisely. In 2000, Woody purchases the New York Jets for $635 million. Under his ownership, the Jets appear in 2 AFC championship games. He throws himself into philanthropy, founds the Alliance for Lupus Research, serves as chairman of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. In 2017, President Trump nominates Woody as U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom. He moves to London, representing his country. From outside, Woody has escaped the curse. Wealthy, successful, respected. But the curse is patient. It's waiting in Los Angeles. September 24th, 1979. Casey Johnson is born to Woody and his first wife, Sally. She grows up on Manhattan's Upper East Side, attends exclusive Chapin School alongside Paris and Nicky Hilton. At 8, Casey is diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. Type 1, the serious kind that requires constant monitoring, insulin injections, careful attention. She has access to the best medical care money can buy. She should be fine. Casey's childhood is privileged but complicated. Her parents divorce. She splits time between households. She enrolls at Brown University in 1998, drops out freshman year. She interns with celebrity publicist Lizzie Grubman. In 2001, Casey is present when Grubman backs her Mercedes into a crowd at a Southampton nightclub. 16 injured. Casey isn't driving, but her name appears in articles. Another Johnson in headlines. By her early 20s, Casey is a gossip column fixture. She dates Tila Tequila, a bisexual reality TV personality. Dates Courtney Semmel, daughter of Yahoo's CEO. The tabloids love it. Casey parties at celebrity clubs, photographed constantly, stumbling out of taxis at 4 a.m. She's young, rich, lost. Nobody notices she's dying. 2007, Casey adopts a daughter from Kazakhstan. Names her Ava Monroe, tribute to Marilyn Monroe, her idol. For a moment, motherhood offers hope. I finally have purpose, she tells friends. But purpose doesn't cure addiction, doesn't heal trauma, doesn't manage diabetes requiring daily attention. Within a year, Casey's life spirals. Her family intervenes. They cut off her trust fund, tough love, motivation to get help. But for Casey, whose identity is tied to wealth, cutting off money feels like cutting off oxygen. Her mother, Sale, takes custody of 3-year-old Ava. Child Protective Services investigated, found Casey living in squalor, the house filthy, no food, child not properly cared for. Casey doesn't fight it. She knows she's incapable. November 2009. Casey is arrested for grand theft. She allegedly stole clothing and jewelry from ex-girlfriend's apartment. Her family doesn't bail her out immediately. They want her to experience consequences. When released, Casey is more isolated than ever. December 2009. Casey announces her engagement on Twitter to Tila Tequila. The media treats it as a joke. Nobody takes it seriously. But for Casey, it's someone who wants her, someone who doesn't care about the Johnson name. The engagement lasts weeks. January 2010, Los Angeles. Casey has been staying in a guest house on Mulholland Drive. Last confirmed sighting, December 29th, 2009. Nobody checks on her. Not Tila, not friends, not family. January 4th, a housekeeper unlocks the door. Casey Johnson lies on the floor, dead for days. Maybe 4, maybe 5. She's 30 years old. Empty insulin vials scattered around. Evidence she knew she needed treatment but couldn't or wouldn't administer it. The coroner determines cause: diabetic ketoacidosis, serious complication of untreated diabetes. Without treatment, fatal, but completely preventable. The heiress to a healthcare fortune died from a condition proper healthcare could have prevented. Tila Tequila takes to Twitter, "Everyone please pray for my wifey, Casey Johnson. She has passed away." Within hours, 5,000 plus tweets flood the internet. Paris Hilton tweets, "God has another angel by his side." Headlines write themselves, "Johnson & Johnson heiress found dead at 30. Woody Johnson releases a statement through a publicist asking for privacy. According to some family members, Woody and Casey had not spoken in years. He does not attend her memorial service. Casey Johnson dies without reconciling with her father. without ever feeling like she was enough for the family whose fortune she inherited. The bodies are buried, the lawsuits settled, the fortune divided, but the houses remain. Highland Park, New Jersey, present day. The castle still rises above the Raritan River, but the grand entrance leads to corporate offices now. Merrywold serves as headquarters for a real estate development company. Conference rooms occupy spaces where Johnson children slept. Desks fill rooms where Seward allegedly molested his daughter. The 25 rooms hold computers. The 11 fireplaces are mostly decorative. The secret staircases remain, used for storage. Employees work here. They attend meetings in rooms where Charles Farmer shot his wife in 1963. Do they know the history? Most don't. The company website mentions historic charm and unique architectural features. Doesn't mention murder, doesn't mention abuse. The curse has been renovated away. In the courtyard sits Seward Johnson Jr.'s bronze sculpture, a man reading a newspaper, looking peaceful, content, safe. Everything the Johnson children never felt inside those walls. Princeton, New Jersey, present day. Barbara Piasecka. Johnson died in 2013. After her death, the estate converted Jasna Polana into Princeton's most exclusive country club. Gary Player designed an 18-hole championship course. Membership costs $250,000 initially, just to join. Corporate executives play rounds on fairways where Barbara and Seward once walked. They drink in bars where priceless art once hung. The mansion serves as clubhouse and event venue. Inside, almost everything is different. The Rembrandt paintings are gone, sold at Christie's for tens of millions. The Flemish tapestries gone, the furniture gone. Christie's handled Barbara's art collection sale. The auctions generated $450+ million. The treasures scattered worldwide in months. What remains? Conference rooms, dining halls, pro shop, banquet spaces. The 32 bathrooms serve golfers. The 15 fireplaces are decorative. The 2 bedrooms converted to offices. Weddings take place here now. Brides walk down aisles in rooms where Barbara and Seward fought. Couples exchange vows where an 87-year-old man signed away his children's inheritance. The air-conditioned doghouse still exists. Tour guides mention it with a laugh. The original owner built an air-conditioned house for her dogs. But it represents something darker, a woman so isolated that animals became her primary companions. Barbara died in Poland, not Princeton. Died in the country she'd left with $100 in her pocket. The mansion she built to prove she belonged became her prison. Millbrook, New York, present day. The 600-acre estate Libet assembled over 37 years has been divided and sold. Listed in 2017 for $28.5 million. Took 3 years to sell. New owners are private, living the life Libet imagined but never achieved. The Greek Revival mansion still stands. Renovated again. Made their own. The 18-stall stable houses horses again. The grounds are maintained. Life continues at Lightning Tree Farm, just with different people. The private helipad might be the saddest feature, still exists. But the woman who used it for 40-minute commutes to Manhattan is gone. In New York City, the Vanderbilt mansion tells a different story. Listed for $55 million, reduced repeatedly, eventually converted to rental at $95,000 per month. Someone is living there now, but it's not their home, just a rental. Temporary, just like it was for Libet. Buildings don't forget. Merrywold Castle remembers the kidnapper falling from his ladder. Remembers Charles Farmer shooting his wife. Remembers Mary Lear's allegations that divided a family. Jasna Polana remembers an 87-year-old signing away his children's inheritance. Remembers Barbara's screaming fits captured on recordings. Remembers 15 weeks of testimony exposing dysfunction. Lightning Tree Farm remembers 5 weddings and 5 divorces. Remembers Libet slowly losing her memory, forgetting which property she was in. The guest house on Mulholland Drive remembers Casey Johnson lying dead for days before anyone noticed. But humans forget, or pretend to forget. We renovate away the darkness, paint over the blood, convert tragedy to commerce, and the houses become just buildings again. Beautiful, expensive, historic buildings. The curse fades into footnotes, into archived articles nobody reads, into family stories younger generations half believe. But it's still there, still waiting, still patient, because the money hasn't run out. The trusts still pay. Johnson & Johnson dividends arrive like clockwork. Somewhere another generation inherits a fortune they didn't earn. Wealth that comes with expectations they can't meet. Living in the shadow of a legacy that's more curse than blessing. Here's what we want to believe about wealth: that it solves problems, creates opportunity, protects the people we love. The Johnson dynasty proves otherwise. 5 generations, billions of dollars, mansions costing more than most people earn in lifetimes, access to the best education, healthcare, legal representation. And yet, drug overdoses, fatal accidents, alleged child molestation, murder, bitter will contests, 5 failed marriages, Alzheimer's, diabetes death. And the pattern is undeniable. The fortune that was supposed to protect them destroyed them instead. But why? What is the curse, really? In the 1940s, the general thought he was being clever. He established trusts containing 15,000 shares each, valued at $500,000. Brilliant from a tax perspective. Protected wealth across generations. Ensured incompetent heirs couldn't squander it immediately. But it created something insidious. Children with unlimited resources and no purpose. When you inherit millions simply for being born, what motivates achievement? Why work when dividends cover everything? Why develop skills when your last name opens every door? Robert Wood Johnson. I understood work's value because he started with nothing. The general understood it too. He worked in the powerhouse, learned every department. But their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they inherited wealth without inheriting the character that created it. Bobby Jr., the general's son, never had a chance. His father called him weak, obese, worthless, then fired him. What does that do to a person? How do you develop confidence when your own father considers you nothing? Bobby Jr. raised his own children in that shadow. They inherited his brokenness with their trust funds. Keith Johnson, cocaine overdose at 27. Billy Johnson, motorcycle accident at 23. Libet Johnson, 5 marriages, Alzheimer's at 66. Casey Johnson, dead alone at 30. The trauma passes generation to generation like a genetic disorder. But it's not genetic. It's environmental. It's the poison of being told you're special simply for existing. The curse of having everything except what you need. Purpose, discipline, consequences. When you're as wealthy as the Johnsons, normal human connections become impossible. How do you make friends when everyone wants something? How do you date when you can't tell if someone loves you or your trust fund? How do you trust family when inheritance battles turn siblings into enemies? Mary Lear Johnson travelled with bodyguards everywhere, believed people were trying to kill her. Was she paranoid? Maybe, but she'd been targeted. The attack was real. Being wealthy made her a target. The paranoia destroyed whatever peace she might have found. Casey Johnson dealt with the same isolation. Her engagement mocked by media. Her relationships treated as entertainment. Her struggles as tabloid fodder. When she died alone, nobody checked on her for days. Not her fiancé, not friends, not family. She had a $1 billion trust fund, but nobody cared enough to knock on the door. That's the isolation of extreme wealth, surrounded by people but fundamentally alone. The general designed trusts to protect his family, ensure they'd never struggle, never want, never suffer. But protection became prison. When you never struggle, you never develop strength. When you never earn anything, nothing feels earned. When you never face consequences, you never learn from mistakes. Casey's family cut off her trust fund trying to force rehab. Tough love. But for Casey, losing money meant losing identity. She was the Johnson heiress. Without money, who was she? The trust fund that should have protected her became the thing that defined her. When taken away, she had nothing left. Being a Johnson means something. The name appears on hospitals, research foundations, medical schools. That legacy is blessing and burden. You're expected to live up to it, to represent the family with dignity, to be worthy of the name. But how do you live up to ancestors who changed medicine, who built a global corporation, who became American legends? You can't, especially not when the fortune removes the challenges that might push you to achieve. So you retreat into obscurity or become spectacle. Date celebrities, appear in gossip columns, make headlines for wrong reasons. Casey chose spectacle. Libet chose both, never finding balance. The legacy that should have empowered became crushing. Every mansion represents an attempt to solve internal problems with external grandeur. Seward built Merrywold as a wedding gift, but the castle couldn't contain his appetites or protect his children. Barbara built Jasna Polana to prove she belonged, but the mansion couldn't buy acceptance. Libet assembled Lightning Tree Farm piece by piece, building escape routes, alternative lives. But none gave her what she was searching for. The mansions were magnificent, but also monuments to emptiness, symbols of futile attempts to fill internal voids with external possessions. You can't buy meaning, can't purchase purpose, can't construct happiness from limestone and marble. So what is the curse, really? It's not supernatural. No ghost haunting the bloodline, no ancient hex. The curse is simpler and sadder. Wealth without wisdom, resources without resilience, inheritance without purpose. The curse is having everything except what you need. Being given fish for a lifetime instead of being taught to fish. Being protected from consequences until consequences become catastrophic. The curse is isolation disguised as luxury. Emptiness decorated with marble and gold. The slow realization that the fortune supposed to save you is actually killing you. Robert Wood Johnson. I worked 65 years, died at 65, surrounded by sons who would multiply his fortune. His great-great-granddaughter Casey died at 30, alone, from a preventable condition. That's the curse. That's what happens when money becomes the answer to every question except the ones that actually matter. Not every Johnson succumbs. Some break the pattern. Seward Johnson Jr., raised in Merrywold, became a sculptor, created art celebrating ordinary people, transformed pain into beauty, found purpose outside the fortune. Woody Johnson owns an NFL team, serves as ambassador, runs philanthropic foundations. He's suffered. Losing Casey will never heal. But he functions, contributes, matters beyond his last name. The ones who survive find purpose independent of fortune, build something themselves. Discover wealth is a tool, not an identity. But they're the minority. For every Seward Jr. who becomes an artist, there's a Mary Lee who dies believing assassination plots are everywhere. For every Woody who finds public service, there's a Casey who dies alone at 30. The curse claims more than it spares. There's a photograph that nobody took, Imagine all the Johnson mansions lined up: Merrywold Castle, Jasna Polana, Lightning Tree Farm, the Vanderbilt Mansion. In front of each, place the people who died there, or because of there. Casey Johnson, 30. Mary Lee Johnson, 63. Barbara Farmer, murdered. J. Seward Johnson Sr., 87. Libet Johnson, 66. Keith Johnson, 27. Billy Johnson, 23. Now ask yourself, was it worth it? Robert Wood Johnson. I would recognize the numbers. Original factory, a few $1,000s. By his death, $2 million. But look at what that became. Merrywold Castle, $6 million. Jasna Polana, $175 million. Lightning Tree Farm, $28.5 million. The $400 million will contest billions in trust assets. The numbers are staggering, but calculate the other costs. 2 brothers dead in their 20s. A daughter with bodyguards believing people wanted her dead. A woman who married 5 times searching for something money couldn't buy. A 30-year-old heiress dead on a floor, alone, forgotten. Families torn apart. Generations with everything except purpose. What's that worth? Here's the cruelest irony. Johnson & Johnson genuinely helps people. Band-Aids heal wounds. Baby powder soothes skin. Medical innovations saved millions. Research foundations search for cures. The company lived up to its credo. Our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and patients. But the family? They couldn't heal their own wounds, couldn't soothe their own pain, couldn't cure their own sickness. A company dedicated to care created a family incapable of caring for each other. A fortune made from medicine couldn't prevent Casey from dying at 30 from a treatable condition. Not the family, scattered, estranged, living under different names. Not the connections. Cousins barely know each other. Siblings compete. Family reunions, if they happen, feel like business meetings. Not the legacy of care Robert Wood Johnson I hoped for. What remains is the company. That's it. Johnson & Johnson will outlast every Johnson. The corporation is immortal in ways humans never are. Long after the last Johnson descendant dies, the company will still manufacture Band-Aids, still heal wounds, still generate profits for shareholders with no connection to the founding family. The business endures. The family is already gone. You've read this far, so you're wondering, what's the lesson? Maybe you're wealthy, planning your estate, worried about what you'll leave your children, or maybe you struggle with bills and mortgages. Read about billion-dollar inheritances and think, I'd trade places. The lesson is the same for both. Money is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. It can build hospitals or fund addiction, create opportunity or eliminate motivation, protect or imprison. The difference isn't the amount, it's the wisdom of people who control it. Robert Wood Johnson. I used money as a tool, built a company helping people, created jobs, revolutionized medicine. The general used money as a weapon, controlled children with it, fired his son, built an empire while destroying a family. By the 3rd, 4th, 5th generations, money wasn't tool or weapon, it was identity, the only thing defining them, the curse they couldn't escape. The Johnson story is the American dream in microcosm. First generation, work, 65 years to build something from nothing. Second generation, expand the empire. Third generation, inherit wealth without character. Fourth generation, tragedy, dysfunction. Fifth generation, scattered survivors trying to distance themselves. It's a pattern repeated across American history. But the Johnsons demonstrate something particularly American, the belief that money can solve everything. It's a lie, a seductive lie. Because if the Johnson fortune with all its billions couldn't prevent Casey from dying alone at 30, then what can? The answer is uncomfortable. Connection, purpose, meaning. The things money can't buy and trusts can't protect. The things the Johnsons lost while building their mansions. Subscribe if you want more stories about the hidden costs of extreme wealth. The American dynasties that rose and fell. The mansions that became monuments to human folly. But more importantly, look at your own life. What are you pursuing that might destroy you? What are you building that might imprison your children? What legacy are you creating that future generations will need to escape? The Johnsons aren't villains, they're cautionary tales. They show us what happens when we confuse wealth with worth, when we believe possessions can fill spaces only people can occupy. The cure isn't poverty, it's wisdom. Build wealth if you can, but build character first. Create security for your family, but create meaning too. Leave an inheritance if you're able, but leave values that matter more than value itself. The Johnson fortune will outlast the Johnsons. The company will thrive while the family dissolves. Don't let that be your legacy. Build homes, not houses. Places where people matter more than property. Where relationships are more valuable than real estate. Where love is more important than limestone. Because in the end, when lawyers have settled estates and heirs have sold properties and mansions have been converted to golf courses, all that remains is the question: did you love well? The Johnsons had billions, they had castles, they had trust funds paying out millions. But when Casey Johnson died at 30, nobody checked on her for days. That's the curse. That's the tragedy. That's the warning. Money can buy mansions, but it can't buy someone who cares enough to knock on your door and ask if you're okay. Don't forget that. Somewhere in Highland Park, Merrywold Castle stands above the Raritan River. The sun sets behind its turrets. Employees leave for the day. The building settles into silence, alone with its memories. In Princeton, golfers finish rounds at Jasna Polana. The clubhouse closes. The mansion that cost $30 million goes dark. Barbara's air-conditioned doghouse stands empty. The 2 bedrooms serve purposes she never intended. The building remembers everything, but nobody asks. In Millbrook, Lightning Tree Farm houses a family not named Johnson. They ride horses Libet never knew. They use her helipad. They live the life she assembled but never inhabited. The building is happy now. It has purpose. People who stay. It has become what Libet wanted but couldn't create. Home. In Los Angeles, that guest house on Mulholland Drive is just another rental. The owner renovated, painted, replaced floors where Casey lay dead. New tenants live there. Don't know the history. Don't know a billionaire heiress died in their living room. The building has forgotten, or pretends to forget. The houses wait. They've seen dynasties rise and fall. They'll see others. The Johnson curse continues. Somewhere, because curses don't die. They evolve. Find new victims. But you don't have to be one of them. You know the story now. You've seen what happens when wealth without wisdom meets inheritance without purpose. The question is, what will you build? Mansions or homes? Fortunes or families? Legacies that last or connections that matter? The choice is yours. The curse is optional. But the buildings, those eternal witnesses to human folly, are already watching, waiting to see if you're different, waiting to see if you've learned, waiting to see if this time finally someone will break the pattern. The stones are patient. They have nothing but time. And somewhere in those walls, in spaces between limestone blocks, in silence of empty rooms, in echoes of footsteps that no longer fall, the answer is already written. Some houses are built to last forever, but no fortune can survive a family that forgets how to love. The Johnsons built castles, but they lost each other in the halls. Don't make the same mistake.